I think the visual fields is something that you all need to know as postgraduates. You can come forwards if you want an interactive session, but if you don't want an interactive session, then
No, we want an interaction.
Then I can ask you to get up and kind of read visual fields.
So
Will
those
that be
who
okay?
want to leave can leave.
Yeah.
You'll make them leave.
Okay, so I'll have to ask you to get up and read the visual fields. Anyway, so quickly how to read a visual field. You must know that perimetry is primarily being used to confirm a diagnosis of glaucoma. It is not used to kind of diagnose the disease. So when you want to diagnose the disease, it's primarily based on the optic disc features, right? So perimetry is used to actually confirm the diagnosis. It is used to monitor how the patient is progressing, based on which you make your therapeutic decisions, and of course the quality of life of a patient will depend upon the perimetry in visual field. So the entire visual field defects in glaucoma would primarily be affected by the anatomy. You must understand that the anatomy of the retinal nerve fiber layers is in an arcuate fashion. So what you're looking for in a glaucomatous visual field is an arcuate defect, okay, which is different from a neurological defect. A neurological defect will always respect the vertical midline, whereas a glaucomatous defect will always respect the horizontal midline. That is why we are always looking at this horizontal line, and then there are visual field defects above or below this horizontal line, right? That is what the GHT also does, the glaucoma hemifield test. It compares the superior with the inferior, because either it will be a superior defect or it will be an inferior defect, right? Unless of course it is very advanced, in which case both the superior and inferior are involved. So when you look at the defects on visual field, again as I said, it is an arcuate. This is an arcuate fashion defect, and therefore you will look for an arcuate scotoma. You look for a nasal step, a cedal scotoma, you look for an arcuate defect, and that is how you will say that the probability of that being glaucomatous is high. So earlier we used to do kinetic perimetry. We have more or less left the kinetic perimetry because it is more difficult and cannot be objectivized. So what we are going to discuss are visual field defects in glaucoma, which could be, as I said, paracentral defects. They could join and form an arcuate defect like this, okay, or in the end stage there could be a small central island of vision or a peripheral island of vision only left. So when you are looking at a visual field on a printout, you have to look at how the data has been entered. You have to interpret it. You have to then look, if you have multiple visual fields, you have to look for progression. For a single visual field, you have to do it yourself to be able to understand how it is done, and only then you can interpret it properly. That means if you have an availability of a perimetry, please at least during your graduation try and do at least 1 or 2 perimetry yourself. So when you have a printout in front of you, you have to ask yourself what strategy has been used, whether it's reliable, not reliable, normal, abnormal, and if it is abnormal, whether it's glaucomatous or not. So the visual field defects can be, when you're looking at a perimetry, you can divide it into different parts, but most importantly, you must check the name of the patient. Is it the same as the one that you are examining in front of you? Okay, you have to look at the pupillary diameter. The minimum pupillary diameter of 3 millimeters is required. Anything smaller than that would lead to visual field constriction. Okay. The strategy, earlier we used to do a full threshold, but the full threshold has more or less.
So Vinay, can we do a dilated examination?
Yeah, we can do a dilated examination also. It will give similar results as a 3 millimeter pupil, but if there are some problems because of glare and all, then there could be a problem with that. So yeah, but it should be a minimum 3 millimeters. It could be 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters, or 6 millimeters also. The other thing important is that you have to look at what is the refractive error that you have provided to the patient. So that you have to see the refractive error of the patient, and then you have to, based on that, you have to enter the date of birth, and then the machine itself will calculate what is the near correction, because what you're looking at is a near correction. So what you have to put in front of the patient's eyes is near correction. So the patterns of visual field that are present on perimetric examination are a 5-degree pattern like you see here, which is primarily used for macular thresholds. You have a 10-2, which is primarily used when most of the visual field is already gone and you have only a small central island left, and then you want to see how it is changing over a period of time. You have a 24-2 which is done very often in the West because they want to save time, they want to do the test quickly, and so the 24-2 is only 24 degrees is tested. But what we do mostly is a 30-2, that means we try and test at least a 30-degree visual field. The 60-degree visual field is primarily used for neurological disorders, and then there is an Esterman grid. An Esterman grid is present on the Humphrey. It is a supra-threshold testing. It is primarily used for patients where you need to give a driving license for, okay, or for medical legal purposes. So you should know about what an Esterman grid is. So most of these strategies are full threshold, CETA fast, CETA standard. But the CETA strategies are generally faster than the full threshold, and therefore to save time, more or less, we have switched over to the CETA strategies. Does anyone know what CETA stands for? Swedish Interactive Threshold Algorithm. Okay? Yes? Does anyone not know what it is about? You all know? If someone doesn't know, please raise your hand, because this could be an examination question. What is a CETA? Anyway, so you have to match the patient's needs to what he requires, isn't it? A patient who's already got a very advanced visual field, you would like to do something like a 10-2, or you will increase the size of the stimulus because his visual field is already very constricted. But for a patient who is doing it for the first time and has never done a perimetry before, you would like to do a CETA fast, just something like a screening test. Okay? So the points that are tested in a 30-2 are 76, in a 24-2 are 56, and macular test is 16 points. So what the CETA actually does is it sees which are the points defective and then tries to focus on those points to be able to get the scotoma. So it's an intelligent way of doing perimetry and a faster way of doing perimetry. Okay, so all of these parameters should be fixed. That means the patient's, the strategy that has been used, the program has been used, the size of the stimulus that has been used over a period of time should be fixed. It's not that sometimes he's doing 10-2, another time he's doing 24-2, and third time he's doing 30-2. So, or if he's done a 24-2, you would like to compare it with a 24-2 over the next period of time. So this tells you whether it's reliable or not. False positive, false negatives more than 20% are unreliable. Fovea should be tested. The important thing that you must look at in a visual field is what are the total deviation probability plot, total deviation plot, the pattern deviation plot, and the pattern deviation probability plot. Yes, people who understand this can raise their hands. Those who don't understand it can ask me a question. Otherwise, I'll skip this. You all understand what a total deviation and pattern deviation is? Yes? No? No? At least raise your hand if you don't know.
बता दे यार.
So the pattern deviation is basically derived from the total deviation, right? Total deviation takes into account how much is it deviating from the age-matched normals, right? Now from that, then you take out a pattern deviation. That means you look at what is the generalized loss, remove the generalized loss, and then you will get the localized effects. Okay? This is how the pattern deviation is derived from the total deviation. Okay? So this is the total deviation plot. This is the total deviation probability plot. That means it tells you the probability that these points are abnormal. Okay? Okay. Then these are all the threshold values which you also can look at. The most important thing you have to see is the mean deviation and the pattern standard deviation. The mean deviation tells you to what extent it is abnormal compared to the normal population, and this value of 0.5% will tell you to what extent that p-value is abnormal, right? Similarly with the pattern standard deviation. It's the same as mean and standard deviation for any person. Right. Now we go on to what is the glaucoma hemifield test. The glaucoma hemifield test primarily compares the superior with the inferior hemifields, because in glaucoma it's either a superior or an inferior, and it will tell you, the computer itself will give a printout which says it's outside normal limits, borderline, within normal limits, or it's an abnormally high sensitivity. So when you have to look at what is abnormal and what is normal, you must understand this principle of a glaucomatous scotoma. Scotoma would be considered when there are 3 contiguous points with less than 5%, okay, one point of which is less than 1%, it should be in the Jerem's area. Now the Jerem's area is that arcuate area that I was showing you, which extends from the blind spot all over to the nasal periphery. Yes? The CPSD should be, or the PSD should be less than 5%, or the GHD should be abnormal, and this should be present in at least 2 consecutive visual fields to be considered as probably glaucomatous. Now these were printouts from the Humphrey, but this is a octopus printout. An octopus is different from the Humphrey. It is color coded. Okay, it also shows you what is known as the Bebe's curve, where most of the points are lying within normal limits. These are the 5 to 95%, whereas there are some points which are quite abnormal, right? Whereas in this part, you can see that almost all the points are abnormal. Okay, there are none of the points which are abnormal. That means the entire visual field is wiped out. Okay, so this is an octopus. The darker colors in the octopus mean abnormality, whereas the lighter colors means there is not so much of abnormality. Now, a visual field defect can not only be because of glaucoma, but it could be because of any other pathology that could mimic glaucoma, right? Like a BRVO, again, quite prevalent in glaucomatous patients, or a tilted retina, like in a high myope who could also be having glaucoma. And optic nerve pathologies, like what is this? Yes, anyone? The first slide, what is this? Pit. Okay, a pit can also cause a glaucomatous defect. Drusen can also cause an glaucomatous paracentral scotoma, and so can a disc edema. And then there could be conditions like pituitary tumors, which could have things like a small scotoma somewhere, which could enlarge later on to become hemifield defects, but in initial period might be quite like glaucomatous. Now I am going to show you examples, and you are going to tell me. So can someone, the one in the green jacket, sir, just get up? Can you read this visual field just for your own thing? So how do you read a visual field? If you have a visual field in front of you, how would you read it? So you look for reliability. Yes, very
सबसे
good.
पहले क्या बोला था? नाम.
The name of the patient should correspond with what
Yeah.
the patient is in front of you. Okay, the eye. Okay. Okay, you have to see that the age matches that particular
Yeah.
patient, that is, age has been correctly mentioned. So you look at all of these parameters first. Okay, then you come to
Reliability.
okay, reliable. So you think it's reliable, it's fairly reliable. Yes, then you come to the total deviation, pattern deviation. How do you think this looks like? So this shows you something of a scotoma. Yes, it shows you like a superior scotoma. Yes, does it qualify those three criteria that I told you? There are 3 points contiguous. Yes, in the Jerem's area, in that arcuate area. Yes. Okay, so therefore the likelihood of this being glaucomatous is high. The GHT is also outside normal limits. Okay, and you can see this arcuate defect here. Yes. So what you would say is that the likelihood of this visual field being glaucomatous is high, but you would always like to correlate it clinically. You would like to see the optic disc before you actually confirm it to be glaucoma. So seeing just the perimetry is not enough, right? So these are parameters. And what does the mean deviation show? -9, right? So if it is a glaucomatous defect, you can even categorize them as mild, moderate, and severe. Mild is less than 6. Between 6 and 12 is about moderate, and more than 12 to 18 is severe, and so on, right? So you can even look at the mean deviation and say to what extent is what is the severity of this visual field defect. Okay, so the girl next to him, next, what do you think about this visual field? So it's a reliable visual field. Okay, the fovea has not been tested. Yes, then okay. So what is your interpretation of this visual field? So you think it doesn't look like glaucoma? Anyone else who thinks it is glaucomatous, could be glaucomatous? Please raise your hands. Yes, you think it is glaucomatous? Okay, tell me how. So in the pattern deviation plot, you can see that there are actually 3 contiguous. The contiguity could be either horizontal, it could be vertical, or the contiguity could also be oblique contiguity. Yes, so there is 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, right? 3 points which are contiguous. They are even contiguous with a blind spot. So there is something like an early sedal scotoma probably forming here, right? Then there is the GHT, which is outside normal limits. So the probability of this could be glaucomatous, but again we need to kind of repeat the visual field examination, see the patient clinically. Okay, if the patient has a superior notch, an inferior notch on the optic disc, then the probability of this being glaucomatous is high, right? Okay. So this is the 3 points that we're talking about. What about this, the girl next to you? Can you talk about this visual field? Yeah.
End.
Uh-huh. The glaucoma hemifield test is outside normal limits. So mean deviation is about -8, yes? And okay, there are 3 consecutive points which are contiguous. So what the likelihood of this being glaucomatous is very high. Anyone differs from her? Can raise your hands. What is the foveal threshold? 17. Is it good? No. Normal foveal threshold is approximately 30 plus, yes? 34, 35, but this is very low foveal threshold. In glaucoma, the last to get lost is the central, isn't it? The fovea is last to get lost. So therefore, to have a 17 is obviously something more than glaucoma. There's something else going on here, yes? So these are all points in the center. So what else could it be? If not glaucoma, it could be a macular degeneration. Yes? Okay, sit down. So therefore, the probability of this being not glaucoma. Okay, so this is probably not glaucoma, it is something else, right? And then we have to closely look at the macula of this patient. Okay? Okay. This is classically a superior arcuate defect, okay, which is also known as an altitudinal defect, which you see characteristically in which condition? AIONs, okay? Okay, but it could also be because of glaucoma. Then sometimes you get visual fields like this, which is temporal to the blind spot. When you see a temporal wedge, most of the defects in glaucoma are nasal to the, okay, in the nasal part, but the nasal step, arcuate scotoma, serial scotoma, everything is nasal to the op. But if you rarely sometimes see a defect which is temporal, which is like this, then it's unlikely to be glaucomatous. Okay? So this is unlikely to be glaucomatous. It can be, but unlikely. And what do you see over a period of time? This is an overview printout that defect is kind of decreasing. Okay? So there is a trend towards a improvement, which could be because of a learning effect. That means the patient had a defect earlier, but over a period of time he learned how to do the visual fields and therefore learned how to do it. Okay? And so it improved. Or it could also have been that the patient may have had a cataract earlier, which gave this defect, and the cataract surgery was done, and now the defect is more or less almost is going away. Like again, you see here the same patient, that visual field defect is more or less gone. Okay, so these are overview printouts. That means when multiple visual fields are done, you can get all the fields in a single printout. And then this was another patient that was referred to us with a kind of an arcuate defect. He was on glaucoma treatment, but when you look at his optic disc, you see, what do you see? Anyone can raise their hands? Coloboma. Okay, so basically he was not glaucomatous based on his visual fields, and he was being diagnosed with and treated with for glaucoma. Okay, so some patients are born with abnormalities which may mimic a visual field defect which is glaucomatous and are being treated for that. Okay, but they are not glaucomatous. So there are other types. So these were all that I describe a white on white perimetry. But there are other types of psychological tests like SWAP, FDP, which you must know only for theoretical purposes because they're not used practically. Okay, the SWAP, the FDP, and the high pass resolution perimetry. I'm not going to go into the details of it. You can read about these things. But for your information, you must know that perimetry is now also available on very smart devices like the iPads. Okay, that perimetry is also available on virtual perimeters. Okay, there are other kinds of perimetry which are also available and therefore can be used apart from these expensive devices which are there in the market. The next important thing after reading a single printout is to be able to analyze whether there is progression or not. So I'm quickly going to go through what is progression. So that is what is change in glaucoma. So when you look for change in glaucoma, you look for how, to what extent the scotoma is increasing in depth or enlarging. Okay, okay, or a new scotoma forming. So these are the things that you are going to look for in glaucoma. So the other way is when you're looking at progression is the rate of progression. That means how is the mean deviation changing over a period of time, okay, which is known as a rate of change, and this is depicted as a graph, and you can get this on the Humphrey also. On the most of the printouts, if they have got at least 5 or more printouts, you will get this kind of graph, okay, as a printout, and you should be able to read it because it's very simple. 100% is the full perimetric values that he has. Over a period of time, the patient is losing his perimetry, okay, and this extent of loss is told in percentages. That means 20% loss, 30% loss, 40% loss. So the percentage of visual field loss is this much. This is the amount of that he's going to lose over the next 5 years if the same treatment continues, and this is the percentage that is remaining, okay. So this is known as a regression graph or a rate of change. And here is an example where a patient started off with baseline visual fields that were normal, but over a period of time started losing visual fields at a very rapid rate. His age was 40 years, and over a period of 10 years he's lost so much of his visual field. So from 100% he's gone to 60%, and the rate of loss is almost like 8 to 9% per year, okay. So you can predict how much of the visual field that the patient is going to lose. It's very simple, okay. Right, so this is about progression, but there are problems when you're looking for progression. I showed you learning effect. There could be a patient who is learning. There could be long-term fluctuations, because glaucoma is a disease where the patient will say kabhi mujhe acha dikhta hai, kabhi nahi dikhta hai, especially if the defect is advanced, okay. So there will always be some fluctuations in the way visual fields are carried out, okay. And if it's already a very bad visual field, right, then again it's very difficult to tell whether progression is happening or not happening. And finally, as I said, there could be other pathologies along with glaucoma that could compound the visual field defect. For example, this patient who had advanced visual field defect came to us with visual fields like these, okay, worsening visual fields. His IOP was absolutely normal, and we couldn't understand why his visual field was worsening. And then we got an MRI and found that there was a pituitary adenoma sitting there, okay. So there could be a superimposed defect over and above the primary pathology. So that's all about, more or less, about progression and about different types of visual field defects. But I think you can learn more the more you read. And any questions?